Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and this week I'm sharing a new short story I wrote called Good to Be King. I actually first wrote this several years ago, and I'm in the middle of working on a new short story, but I figured to finish that one before I start up on new ideas that I have. So that's why I'm just sharing this kind of random story that I wrote several years back. So let's just go ahead and dive on in. Without further ado, it's story time. You're an idiot, Ricky. And you're a wimp, Lucas. The aforementioned idiot stood atop a thick tree branch, his hands looped around a thinner branch above him. On the ground, his blonde-haired, wimpy friend looked so small he could crush him with his thumb if he wanted. Lucas is right, you're gonna hurt yourself, Jane said, sounding more like a judgmental older sister instead of his friend. She always was protective and cautious, yet she looked like a little girl with her pigtails and freckles. Then again, she was a little girl, or at least depending on who you asked. To a toddler, for instance, 11 years old sounded impressive, so really it was all about perspective. Oh yeah, Ricky said to Jane, cocking a brow and flashing a devious smile as he swung forward, still clinging to the branch with both hands. He saw the way Jane's eyes popped, and it only ignited the fire blazing through his lanky body. Tell you what, Jane, how about after I jump off this branch and land perfectly on my feet, you give me a kiss? Ew, Jane said as Lucas cackled beside her. In your dreams, Ricky. Now get down here already before you hurt yourself. Yeah, Ricky, stop being an idiot, Lucas said. No one asked you to do this. Their chiding only egged him on, and with a deep breath, Ricky set his gaze on his target, luscious green grass, sweeping as far as the horizon. He felt a breeze and inhaled deeply, letting the cool air fill his lungs. With a sigh, Ricky tightened his hold on the scratchy tree branch, flexed his toes, and straightened his shoulders. Here goes nothing. He took one last look at his friends. Jane, with her hands clasped together and pressed to her chest, and Lucas, arms folded impatiently, silently waiting. At last, Ricky swung off the branch and let go. The air whooshed through his ears. His stomach swooped as he headed toward the ground, his arms and legs flailing until, crash, he met the ground hard, and everything went still. He lay strewn across the grass, chest heaving, arms stretched over his head and legs splayed, his heart pounding with exhilaration. Ricky, Jane said, are you okay? He's fine, Lucas said, sounding so sure of himself, yet as Ricky didn't make a move to get up, still regaining his breath, his confidence waned. Hey, Ricky? With a wide grin, Ricky lifted his head. His friends stared down at him, too stunned to move at first, but as he pushed himself off the ground, a hand came into view, though his pride waved it away. He got to his feet, dusted the dirt off his black shirt, and threw back his shoulders. Told you it was easy. You guys shouldn't doubt me. Lucas scoffed. You got lucky. Yeah, Jane said. Don't do that again. You had me scared for a minute. Scared of losing me? Ricky asked, batting his eyes and smirking, which only earned him another disgusted scoff as Jane's worrisome nature permanently derailed and replaced itself with harmless yet annoying derision. She folded her arms and shook her head, muttering to herself, boys. Ricky offered his palm, which Lucas happily high-fived. It felt good to be the king. Wiping the sweat from his brow and dressed in his baggy gym shorts and a white t-shirt, Ricky shut the front door and strolled into the kitchen, where he could smell the delicious aroma of steak and mashed potatoes. I'm home from practice, Mom. His mother, Peggy, turned and smiled at him, gently ruffling his hair and giving him a kiss even as he tried to duck away. Just in time, his mom said. Dinner's ready. Will you go get your brother? Sure, Mom, Ricky said, heading upstairs. He pushed open his brother's bedroom door. His older brother, Paul, scrambled and swore under his breath as the tiny flame from his lighter went out. Don't you knock? He asked. Sorry, Ricky said. Dinner's ready. Whatever, his brother said, kicking back up his feet on his desk and flicking back on his lighter. He dug into his pocket, only to pause and look at Ricky, considering him. You're not going to squeal on me, right? Right, Ricky said automatically. Good, Paul said. And he immediately withdrew a thin stick that looked like a cigarette, but Ricky knew it wasn't. Paul lit the joint and inhaled deeply, holding the smoke in his lungs, until he coughed and the smoke billowed around him. His shoulders sank as a relaxed smile stretched over his face. He offered the burning joint to Ricky. Want a hit? I don't know, Ricky said hesitantly, yet unable to take his eyes off the joint, the pungent smell of weed filling his nostrils. This wasn't the first time his brother had offered him a hit. and every time was always the same. Pussy, Paul said, like always, as he lit the joint and took another hit himself, inhaling as much as his lungs could take. His cheeks turned red, and finally he exhaled, chest drooping, eyelids growing heavy. Ricky watched the smoke swirl around Paul's head and dissipate in the air. He swallowed. He felt a sudden urge to win back his brother's approval, his respect. You know that huge tree in the abandoned field? I jumped off it today. Paul's attention was back on the joint, hazy eyes fixed on his lighter as he pressed down with his thumb, bringing the flame to life and lighting the joint yet again. Big deal, he said after taking a third hit. You know, I did that when I was 8, way younger than you. How old are you again? 10? 11? Same thing, Paul said. You're only 14, Ricky said, almost snobbishly, growing annoyed. He wasn't a baby. He was a big kid. Why couldn't his brother see that? What would it take? Suddenly it hit him. Determined, Ricky held out his hand and said, "Give me the joint." Paul's reddened eyes popped, and his eyebrows flew up, but then he just smirked, impressed, and he handed Ricky the joint with the blue lighter. "Attaboy, bro. Hurry up and smoke it. Mom's gonna wonder what's taking so long." Ricky fumbled with the lighter as he clutched the joint in his left hand, pinching between his thumb and index finger, the way his brother did it. He tried to flick on the lighter, running his thumb over the metal piece over and over and over, unable to get it right. "Press down harder," Paul instructed. He did. The flame came up. Ricky's heartbeat picked up in anticipation as he brought the orange flame to the joint, lingering it over the tip and pulling it away. Closing his eyes, he brought the joint to his lips and inhaled, filling his lungs with smoke. He choked and immediately coughed, sputtering out smoke. "Close but no cigar," Paul said. "You gotta hold the smoke. Try again. Hold it in as long as you can." Ricky obliged, relighting the joint, drawing in another deep breath. The smoke threatened to burst from his lips, but he kept his lips shut this time, cheeks puffing as he held back his cough. His eyes watered. The smoke tinged his nostrils, acrid and strong. At last he exhaled, slowly, the relaxation sinking in. He felt mellow. He felt weird. He felt like this wasn't really such a big deal. He took another hit, holding on to the smoke. "Now you've got it," Paul said. Ricky felt himself grin. His brother's hair looked blonde and bleachy. Was it always so blonde and bleachy? His brother also had a zit growing on his cheek. Ricky wanted to touch it. Before he could do anything, Paul snatched the lighter and burning joint from his hands, taking one more quick puff and exhaling hard. "Let's eat, I'm starved," he said. Ricky didn't say a word throughout dinner as he scarfed down his steak and mashed potatoes. Paul complimented their mom on her amazing dinner, and she smiled in appreciation and noted that Ricky had an extra big appetite tonight, just like his brother. "You did what?" Jane asked. "You're lying," Lucas said. "There's no way you got stoned with your dumb older brother." "I did so," Ricky said. "I smoked pot with my brother, and you know what? He said I was cool." "Smoking pot isn't cool," Jane said in that "I know better than you" tone of hers. It wasn't cute, it was annoying. "It makes you lazy." "And hungry," Ricky said. "It was fun. You'd like it, Luke." "Who are you?" Lucas asked, anger spiking. He thrust the basketball they'd been tossing around on the court. Ricky tried to catch it but missed, and it bounced away uselessly. All three watched it roll to a stop. Then Lucas and Jane looked back at Ricky, both frowning. "What?" Ricky asked. "Give me a break, guys. My brother finally likes me." "Your brother's a dick," Lucas said. "You've said so yourself. What do you care if he likes you?" "He's also a loser," Jane said. "Didn't you say he almost had to repeat 7th grade?" "Exactly, almost. He's not that dumb. You guys are just jealous," Ricky said. "Of what?" Lucas demanded. "That I'm cooler than you," Ricky said simply. "You are so not," Lucas said. "What, you jump off one tree and smoke one joint and now you're a hotshot? I could do that crap with my eyes closed." "Oh yeah," Ricky said, ready to challenge him on that. "Wanna bet?" "You're both idiots," Jane said. "Shut up, Jane," Lucas said, limbs wrapped around the thick bark of the tree he'd climbed halfway up. Ricky was ahead of him, passing the branch he'd jumped off of the other day, and instead inching higher. "Leave Jane alone," Ricky said, arms trembling a bit. He paused and clenched his hands around the bark, then resumed climbing up the tree, hoisting his legs higher. It was tougher than it looked the second time around as they headed up even higher. "Can you guys please just listen to me for once and not do this?" Jane said. "There's gotta be a safer way to see who's cooler." "Nope," Ricky said, heaving his body upward. He clung to a branch and pulled himself up. Don't forget, this was all Lucas's idea. After this, we're gonna smoke a joint, right? Unless you're scared. Lucas jolted, teeth clenching, eyes blazing as he snapped his head up and shouted, I'm not scared. Then prove it, pussy. What'd you call me, you asshole? Lucas asked. Pussy, Ricky repeated, blunt and nonchalant. The insult awakened Lucas's rarely explored fury, full and sweeping. He released a growl and swiped at him, grabbing his ankle. Ricky slipped and fell, and Jane screamed as the two of them tumbled to the ground, landing hard. Ow, Ricky said meekly, head throbbing and back aching, a shooting pain in his right arm. He heard rushing footsteps and Jane's screeching voice as she cried their names, but it sounded echoey. Ricky's eyes struggled to stay open as his vision blurred, blackening into nothingness, his ragged breathing drowning out Jane's screams when abruptly everything went black. Ricky awoke to a tingling and itchy feeling inside his right arm. As he slowly became more alert, he looked around to gather his bearings, only to see that he was in an unfamiliar setting. Weird machines, metal railings, plain walls, a beige curtain, a TV hanging above, a big window. My poor baby! His heart jumped at the sound of his mom's voice. She rushed to his side and kissed him on the forehead. He cringed and wiped the saliva off with his good hand. Your friends told me everything. Thank goodness you only broke your arm and didn't hit your head. What on earth were you thinking, young man? Your brother's here too, by the way. You should have seen how worried he looked. Have you eaten anything yet? What do you want? I'll go get you a snack from the cafeteria. She was back out the door before he could even answer, passing his brother, who lingered by the doorway. He strolled inside, and Ricky crinkled his nose, the sharp smell of pot piercing his nostrils once more. Hey, little bro. Don't worry, I'll smoke you out later. It'll make you feel better, trust me. Thanks, but I think I'm good, Ricky said. No more dumb stuff for me. Paul wrinkled his nose, pulling a face of disgust. He shook his head and turned away. We'll see, he said as he turned and headed back out. Glad you're okay, though. Ricky sighed, shutting his eyes, slowly breathing in and out as he tried to ignore the ache in his arm. Ricky, you awake? His eyes snapped back open. There stood his friends, Lucas and Jane. The former perfectly unharmed. How unfair. Sorry I broke your arm, Lucas said as if reading Ricky's mind. It's all right, Luke. Sorry I made you so mad that you accidentally broke my arm. Lucas grinned and held out his fist. Ricky raised his left hand and they fist bumped. You win, by the way. Ricky beamed with pride, only to catch Jane's gaze. She stood looking uncertain, eyes flitting between him and his broken arm. He looked at his right arm, wrapped in a solid white cast, where he saw a single name scrawled in fancy blue cursive in a small note. Next time, listen to me, dummy. Finished with the heart and signed by Jane. Now he beamed for an entirely different reason. It really was good to be king. Alright, that was Good to Be King. So, a little language, hence why I made this episode explicit, some inappropriate language, and of course also drug use, so, I wasn't going to take any chances, so I figured just make this an explicit episode. And that's kids for you, thinking you're cool and doing dumb shit, honestly, so hopefully he learned his lesson, that's all I gotta say. And this story feels like to me I could have fleshed it out much more and kind of done more with these characters. That's what it is with short stories, that you kind of make it really as long or as short as you want, honestly. Like, I don't know. Well, I guess the longer you make it, it could kind of be a novel then at some point, if you just keep writing and writing. But what I'm saying is that I think I could have even explored even further with these characters and done more to kind of see more about the friendship between Ricky and Lucas and Jane, that little trio that I came up with, so I don't know. And him with the brother, and him just wanting to be cool with the older brother who was just clearly going through his own shit, I don't know with that. But so, because I haven't read this since I wrote it, honestly, and it's been several years, so it's fun to revisit stuff that I wrote several years back. And so, yeah, so I hope you enjoyed that. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of Storytelling Saga. Be sure to visit storytellingsaga.com. You can follow on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And feel free to send me any questions, comments, or writing prompts by emailing me at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Next week, A Dream is a Wish Your Heart Makes. I will be discussing Cinderella. Until then, thank you for listening, and remember, write what you love.